This room seems to be clear. You can just bust it on open. There's nobody in there, but we probably need to check for drugs and whatnot.
Did someone say bust?
What?
I am dead. Restart.
There's no trap. There was no trap there.
I beg to differ. What is up, guys? It has been quite a while since I have posted on here, but after playing Ready or Not, I just had to share my experience for those who may not know much about this game or those who are on the fence when it comes to purchasing it. So this video will be my review on it. I'll tell you what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and whether or not this is a game for you. So for those of you who do not know, Ready or Not is a first-person shooter that puts the player in an intense and, quite frankly, realistic SWAT situation. It is up to either you, accompanied by AI, or with your friends to complete a variety of different mission types. Now, these missions include arresting armed suspects as well as civilians under strict rules of engagement, a mission called Raid, in which suspects are heavily armed and engage in larger and quite longer firefights. There's an active shooter mission where you have to get in quickly and eliminate the gunmen as quickly as possible before they kill all the civilians. There's a bomb defusal mission where you race against the clock in order to disarm a bomb before it goes off, and even a hostage situation, which is probably the most difficult among these. And so Ready or Not is a PvE experience, not a PvP experience as of right now. And the reason I say as of right now is because this game is still in early access, so it is possible that it could change quite a bit. And some of you may hear the words early access and you may automatically think that you shouldn't buy this game, but I'm here to say this game feels and looks amazing. Occasionally you run into some bugs, but I've not ran into anything that was just game breaking. So first, like most reviews, I'm going to talk about what I like and what I don't like. And so first, looking at what I like most about this game is the difficulty. I've always been someone who did not like PvE games because they are rarely as challenging as typical player versus player multiplayer experiences. But after spending about 10 hours in this game, I can say that it is one of the most difficult games that I have played. And what makes the game so difficult is the goal is to complete the mission with as little casualties as possible most of the time. And this means little to no casualties not only to your teammates, but civilians as well as the enemies. This game encourages and rewards you for actually taking the time as well as the risk to arrest enemies rather than just gunning them down. So for example, if I see a suspect with a gun, I can shoot them immediately, take them out. I will get points for it and continue the mission. However, if I tell the suspect to drop their weapon, they may or may not comply. If they do, I am able to arrest them and I will be rewarded for taking that risk. And at the end of the mission, you'll be graded based on the points that you have accumulated, and how well you want to be graded depends on the points that you have accumulated. So if I just shoot everyone who's holding a gun, I won't necessarily fail. But if I take the risk in trying to arrest them, I will receive a much higher grade for that. And what I love so much is that it's up to you, the player, to set out a goal for how good you want to do. If you just want to complete the mission with a passing grade, you can do that. But if you're someone who sets out and tries to get a perfect score, you can go for that as well. Another thing I like about Ready or Not is the weapons and the gadgets. When it comes to the weapons and the gadgets, the game is not lacking, especially for an early access game. For a primary weapon, you have 6 assault rifle options, 3 shotgun options, and 3 SMG options, which I think is plenty for a game like this. I think that for this close quarters game, less is more, and personally, just personally, some may disagree, I would rather have a game that has 12 primary options than 20 plus options that may overwhelm me as well as other players. Some may not agree, and you may think that more options is always better, but for this game I like that I have options for weapons, but I'm not overwhelmed by the amount of weapons that are at my disposal. And that's just talking about primary weapons. I believe there are about 7 different options for secondary weapons, which include a taser, as if you want to go the less lethal route. Ready or Not also includes a large variety of primary and secondary gadgets. Some of these gadgets include a battering ram, a breaching shotgun, a riot shield, and a device that allows you to look underneath doorways. You also have secondary gadgets like flash grenades, stinger grenades, as well as gas grenades. There's even a gadget class that allows you to bring door stops that prevent enemies from flanking you, C2 for blowing up doorways, and even bringing mace for civilians or enemies who just choose not to comply. And again, similar to the weapons, you get a variety of tools that help you complete your missions, but you're not overwhelmed by a large variety of options. And again, some of you may think that more is better, but I personally like the variety of weapons and gadgets that are currently available. When it comes to first-person shooters, gunplay is of the utmost importance, and I can happily announce to you guys that Ready or Not is not lacking when it comes to the gunplay. I love the feeling of the weapons in this game. If you want to use a powerful weapon with a lot of recoil, you can use the SBR 300. You want a less powerful rifle that you can run full auto if you need to. You can use the M4. If you want a weapon that has very little recoil, you can use the UMP and sacrifice some penetrating power. They try to make the recoil as realistic as possible, and I think that they did a very good job at that. If you were to compare it to any other games in terms of recoil, it is very similar to, say, probably Insurgency Sandstorm. And that's kind of what I was expecting from a game that is set out to be very realistic. And when it comes to the gunplay, you also have to be very conservative when it comes to ammo. For example, with rifles, you only get 4 mags, which is about 120 rounds. In a game where a mission can last over 20 minutes, you can run low on ammo very quickly if you're someone who chooses to go full auto all the time. So this is another aspect of gunplay and just the game in general that makes it a lot more difficult, which, for me, that makes it a lot more fun. I prefer a challenge. So when it comes to a first-person shooter game, the gunplay and how the guns feel is one of the most important factors to how great the game is. And whenever you add a game that is player versus environment, the enemy AI is the same scenario. If the enemy AI sucks, the game is going to suck. The difficulty and in turn the amount of fun that you will have in a game that is PvE depends on the difficulty of the AI. Some games can have great bones, but if the enemy AI sucks, the game will not be fun. For example, you can look at most of Ubisoft's open world games. I remember getting Ghost Recon Wildlands a few years back, and I stopped playing the game after about 40% because the AI was just so stupid and the game became very repetitive because of that. Stupid AI can ruin PvE games, and while the enemy AI in Ready or Not is not perfect, it does a pretty good job, especially from a small studio, small developer like this. And so there are quite a few reasons as to why the AI in this game is so good. Reason number one being that this is a game in which AI can kill you very easily. I've had situations where I would turn a corner and I would die instantly. You die very quickly in this game. Number two is the AI can be very, very convincing. Sometimes you'll have someone who you think is a civilian raise their hands as if they're complying, and then they whip out a pistol and shoot you before you know what happened. And so, for instance, if you are in a scenario where there are multiple people in a room and you're trying to keep your eyes on everyone, it can make arresting civilians or enemies very difficult, especially when you can't tell the difference between the civilians and enemies a lot of times. Number three is the AI will actually flank you. You always need to have someone on your team watching your back because they will sneak up on you. If you bust into a room and you see a gunman run out the back door, it is likely that that particular AI is working on flanking your entire team, which is something that you don't want on the back of your mind in a game like this. And lastly, the AI are in different locations every time you play this game. So if you play a game like Rainbow Six Siege, and you play Terrorist Hunt, which is the single player game mode, in that game, the enemy AI has been in the same 3 locations for the past 6 years, whereas in Ready or Not, the AI is randomly placed throughout the map, and you will always be on your toes. You will always be surprised as to where these AI spawn, where they are, where they patrol, that sort of thing. So overall, I am thoroughly impressed with the AI in this game. Another thing I like about this game is the maps as well as the map sizes. As of right now, there are only 6 maps, which I think is fair considering this game is, again, in early access. But the devs did a good job when it comes to the size of these maps. Now, some people may think that the maps are too large, which most are on the rather large size, but if there are any smaller, missions could possibly be less than 10 minutes, which in my opinion takes away from the intensity of this game. If you're playing a mission with your friends that lasts 10 minutes and you die at the 4-minute mark, that's a bummer, but it's not too ridiculous for what is a realistic shooter. However, if you die in the first 4 minutes into a mission that is 20 to 25 minutes, which is what you have, that sucks even more. Now, some may not like that. I really like that. I like having a large punishment that forces players to play more conservatively. It allows you to push slower, and it makes it a lot more realistic. I may just be crazy, but I like games that are challenging, and I like games that punish you harshly for messing up. And the last thing I want to talk about for the positives of this game is the single player command system. Now, I will say that this game is far more enjoyable with your friends, but if you want to play alone, that's also a very viable option. And while the single player portion of this game isn't perfect, which I'll get more into here in a bit, the game has a great system for playing with your AI teammates. So if you want to play by yourself, you'll have 4 bots with you, and you can command them with ease. So for instance, if I want my teammates to bust open a door, throw in a flashbang, and clear out the room, the command system allows me to give that command in less than 2 seconds. I can look at the door that I want them to open, hit the command button, hit the button that is bound to the breaching command, which typically either numbers 1, 2, 3, or 4. I'll tell them to bust in either with a breaching shotgun, battering ram, or C2, and as well as whether or not I want them to use flashbangs, gas, or stinger grenades. And again, I can do this in less than 2 seconds. It is so simple and easy to give out commands in this game. It's not nearly as clunky or confusing as I thought it was going to be. So great job at developing a easy to use system like this. So those were all the things that I could think of off the top of my head that were really big positives of this game. However, there are some things that I'm not a big fan of, or things that I think should be improved. So here are some of the things that I don't like. One being player movement. So I'm not crazy about the movement in this game. The movement's very slow, which I can understand to a certain extent. This is a game where you need to take your time planning and clearing areas. This is not designed to be a fast-paced run-and-gun shooter. However, I feel like the walking speed is a little bit too slow. It needs to be an option to, maybe sprint for a short period of time where it maybe works on a cooldown system. And the reason I think there needs to be an option to move slightly faster in certain scenarios has to deal with some of the game modes. So, for example, in the active shooter game mode, the more time you spend trying to get to a particular area of the map, the more people are going to die. Or for example, in the bomb game mode where it's really a race against the clock, I would like an option to move somewhat faster. And no, I don't think that, a player should be in a constant sprint. But as I said, I think that it would be beneficial if there was like a short sprint system with some sort of cooldown bar. We can sprint for like 3 seconds and then you can't sprint for a good while after that. When it comes to the teammate AI, overall it does a good job. However, they seem to constantly be in my way. If I go into a room and try to exit, my teammates will be blocking the door and making it very difficult for me to get out. I expect my teammates to always be with me whenever I go somewhere. However, I can walk into a small bathroom and all 4 of my AI teammates will try to pile in there with me and make it very difficult for me to exit. It makes me very anxious when that happens. But other than that, they do a pretty good job at providing support. And in most situations, I would rather have my AI teammates than completing the missions by myself. But sometimes it can seem clunky. They'll get in my way, or sometimes I'll have it when they move backwards downstairs. Like I've seen AI walk backwards downstairs. So little things like that. Overall, there are more positives than negatives, but that is a small negative I have concerning the teammate AI. And moving on from the teammate AI, let's talk about the civilian AI. And so while overall they do a very good job, sometimes they can be very difficult to deal with. So if I'm doing with an active shooter scenario where there are civilians and you have to make them surrender, you have to arrest them to continue through the mission in order to find the shooters. Sometimes the civilians do not want to comply, which is fine. That adds to the game. However, the problem arises when the civilian won't comply. You can try tasing them, shooting them with beanbag rounds, and macing them, and that still does not get them to drop to their knees. I don't know if this is a problem with the AI or the gadgets themselves, but I don't think that it should take multiple beanbag rounds to the back to get a civilian that we're trying to save to comply with us. Now for this next thing that I'm not crazy about with this game, it's more of a personal preference, not really anything wrong with the game, but it's something that you should know about. Maybe this is something you'll like, maybe something you won't like. I think most people would like this. Maybe I'm just different. I think that's the case. But but it's the headquarters system in this game. So basically the HQ system is the game lobby, but it's set up into a physical police headquarters. So say I start a lobby with my friends and they want to join, we will all spawn into this police station where we can walk to the locker room to change our cosmetics, we can go to the range to test out weapons, we can go to the counter and change all of our loadouts on our equipment, we can run through a kill house that is right there in the HQ. And I will say that the devs did a fantastic job at developing this system. It's very well polished, looks very, very nice. However, I think it takes up a lot of time for me. I do see some value in being able to swap weapons and test them right there, but personally, it's just something that I'm not crazy about, and I would prefer the standard menu lobby system that most games have. However, again, very polished, very nice. It's just not for me, just not something that I like. And lastly, when it comes to some of the cons of this game, are the bugs. And as expected with an early access game, there are some bugs. However, I've not found any bugs or experienced any bugs thus far that were just game breaking. These are more or less just minor inconveniences. So for example, the other night, me and my friends were playing, we spawned into the lobby or whatever. Whenever the match started, all of their laser sights were taken off before spawning into the map. Or sometimes you complete the mission and for whatever reason, the game doesn't think that you've completed it yet, so you just stay there. Or if you die, sometimes you won't be able to spectate your friends. And again, these are minor inconveniences, nothing too major, nothing game breaking or unplayable. But since I am reviewing this game, telling you what I think of it, it is important that I mention bugs exist, and that's to be expected with an early access game. So judging from this review, you can probably tell that this is a game that I enjoy. The problems I have with this game are rather small and are largely outweighed by all the positive things that I have to say about it. So after spending a good amount of time playing the game, I understand why 95% of Steam users have given this game a positive review. However, one criticism I have about this game that I forgot to mention was the price, which is currently $40. Now, some may think that that's a fair price. Some may think that that's way too much. I personally think that it is just slightly overpriced for an early access game. If the price were to be, $30, I think that would be a more fair price. However, we all value things at different price points, and if you think that this is a game that you would get hours of enjoyment out of, I recommend you get this game. So this is a game that I could see me spending hundreds of hours playing due to its difficulty as well as its grading system, where you can always improve your performance. And as I stated at the beginning, I am someone who's always preferred a player versus player game. I've never really enjoyed co-op games or PvE games. However, Ready or Not so far has been a big exception to that. So if you're someone who likes PvE games, games that punish you for performing poorly, first-person shooters, or games that just give you an adrenaline rush, I recommend you pick up Ready or Not. So that pretty much completes my review. Let me know down below if you've already picked up this game, or if you've played this game, or if this is a game that you'd be really interested in getting and you're still on the fence about it. Let me know down below what you think. Also, let me as well as other people know down below whether or not there's a big pro with this game, something you really like about this game that is overlooked, or if there's something that you really hate about this game that is overlooked and is not being talked about enough. Let's have that dialogue so people who are still unsure about this game can have a good idea as to whether or not this game is for them, because nothing's worse than paying money for a game and it's not what you expect and you don't enjoy it. So hopefully this video and us talking about it in the comments will prevent that from happening to other people. So thank you guys for sticking around to the end of the video, and as always, have a good one.